Welcome into our latest Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. The Hear Me, See Me is an initiative of WIBW television where we're taking a deep dive into issues related to mental health and mental illness, raising awareness, affecting change, and more importantly, here on the podcast, sharing stories. You know, sometimes maintaining our mental health is not necessarily easy, but a key part of it can be finding an outlet for our emotions. And if we're lucky, that happens before we hit a crisis point. Sometimes it's a journey that takes us through a crisis. John Cantrell has a lot of titles, a lot of things that you do, John. He's with me today. Business person, dad,
yep,
boxer,
yep,
all sorts of things that you do, all around good guy helping the community. But it was a journey to get to the point that you are at.
That it was.
Today. Well, first of all, how's the boxing going?
Boxing's going well. We got big fight news coming soon. Big fight news for Topeka. But currently 10-0, undefeated with 9 knockouts. Number 30 ranked heavyweight in the country. Everything's going pretty good.
Are you in the phase of fighting where you are eating French fries, or are you in the off French fries phase?
No French fries.
Cookies?
No cookies. I don't know. The hope dealer tries to keep me in cookies, but the coach says no cookies.
So there's a little dilemma going on there. Have you always enjoyed boxing? Has this always been a part of your life?
No.
No.
Nope. It's
so
fairly recent.
What brought you to boxing?
So when I was in prison, I read a book called Spartan Up, and it was about a guy that was a Wall Street bigwig, made all kinds of money, but hated his life. And he started Spartan racing, and he started doing these ultra endurance racing. Mm-hmm. Well, he fell in love with it, and he found that if he could put his body through physical stress, but controlled, right? Because you can stop whenever you want, but you know, if you can control and put yourself through physical stress, it helps with your mental stress and your mental health. So I read this guy's book, and I'd gained a bunch of weight, and I was big, and you know, of course, when I got home, I wanted to look good for Mrs. Wright, which turns out to be my current wife. Mm-hmm. And
who you hadn't met her at the time yet?
No.
Okay.
But I was praying for her every day,
yeah.
And she was the first person I met when I got home.
Ah.
I got out of my parents' car. So my parents picked me up at FCI Forest City in September of 2016, and I'd prayed the whole time, God, put a good woman in my life. I can do anything you want me to do. They picked me up. They brought my red lab Pumpkin, and they drove all the way to Arkansas. They picked me up. They brought me back to the halfway house at 25th and California. I got out of the car, and I shook Taylor's hand. She was the first person I met.
Did she work at the halfway house?
She was doing her internship for her senior year in Washburn at the halfway house.
Okay, so we've skipped over a bunch of your story because when you first started it just kind of flowed off the tongue, and I think people are going, hold up, when I got out of prison? So let's go in the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
What was little Johnny Cantrell like?
Little Johnny Cantrell was...
You probably never went by Johnny.
Oh, I was Little Johnny. You know the Little Johnny jokes?
Ah.
I was the epitome
so
of ornery Little Johnny.
You were ornery Little Johnny.
Oh.
What was going on?
You know, Melissa, I had struggled finding my identity. You know, I constantly wanted more, and I knew that there was going to be more to life, and I thought that when I became an adult and I was able to do adult things, then I'd be satisfied, right? And I never felt sure of myself, and I never put a lot of self-worth into myself, and so I kind of became a chameleon, right? How
does that manifest itself? I mean, are you talking all through grade school this was going on?
So, yeah.
Were you ever well-behaved?
It developed, no. And I'm still not. It developed over time, you know, and, you know, I had a horrible attention deficit disorder. You know, my manic depression and my bipolar disorder, you know, started to pick up. And I found that I could change my colors to blend into my environment to take that stress and social anxiety off myself. So, you know, my partner, Nick Casarona, who's the director out at Mirror, he says it very well. You know, one day I can come to school and be in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. The next day I'm coming in wearing a jersey with a hat on sideways. The next day I'm coming in wearing a suit, getting ready for something else. You know, I could, wherever I'd go, I could blend into my surroundings and to hide.
Did you know that that was because of mental health struggles? Was the ADHD diagnosed? Was the bipolar diagnosed? The depression, was it diagnosed?
No.
What what were you even realizing about yourself, or weren't you? Like, did you know something was going on, and what prevented you from reaching out and saying, this is not right?
So once I got into middle school, it really started to rear, right? Then it's my teachers are saying, you might need some help with a few things, and I'm talking to my parents, but back in the old days, Melissa, mental health wasn't something you could talk about. You pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, which is impossible, by the way. You literally can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But, it was when things were wrong, okay, cool, be tough and get over it. That was what the world used to look like for mental health. And in a lot of places, it still is. It's not always okay to talk about our problems. It's not always okay to not be okay. But I had great parents. And, once they started realizing that I had a problem and I started going to them and sharing with them kind of what was going on, they segued into that. But mental health was young. ADHD was young. It was, let's write a prescription for Ritalin. If your kid is out of control and he's hyperactive and he doesn't want to sit still, let's not change the way that we're teaching. Maybe let's not look at the different multiple intelligences. Maybe I'm a kinesthetic learner and I learn through motion. So instead of doing that, if I don't fit the mold of, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to sit in class and I'm going to look at the board and I'm going to take my notes and I'm going to raise my hand,
What finally was the point where you felt like you needed to talk to your parents?
So I had been diagnosed ADHD, and I had gotten, it's a balance, trying to figure the right medications out and the right amount of that medication. And I had started a dose and it didn't work very well. So we upped it and it didn't work very well. So we upped it again, and all of a sudden I have like this horrible reverse thing where I feel like a robot and I feel completely whitewashed and soulless and horrible, and my depression is out of control and everything else, and I was in really bad mental shape and it was time to get some help.
How old were you, and when you say it was really bad?
That's when you start getting into suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. And this would have been in middle school and early high school.
So you talked to your parents, and they tried to help.
Yeah. So we did what any good family does, and we went and got me some counseling and some help and got on some antidepressants. But even then, it's finding the right balance and the right medicine for you is difficult. And we are so attuned to wanting a quick fix, right? I'm just going to take this and feel better. Well, things have to balance out over time. It takes time to realize these things, and I am the most impatient human being on the planet. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. But
so that must have been what led to the by the way, as much as your parents tried to help and as good as they were,
right,
something must have gone off the rails.
Well, yeah. So once I got a little bit older, we drank in high school, and with drinking comes everything else. And I found that when I drank, it took my social anxiety away, so I would fit in. And then all of a sudden, I'm gregarious, and I'm the life of the party, and I'm having fun and doing everything else. And it felt right. It felt right. And then I found any time that I felt some way that I didn't want to feel, I could take a drink or take a drug, and it would make me feel different, so I wouldn't have those same thoughts and feelings at that time. So then you start self-medicating. And I am not a licensed pharmacist.
So you shouldn't have been doing that.
I've also not gone to medical school. And it got out of hand really fast. So athlete in high school, got hurt, wasn't able to continue being an athlete in college. Drinking really took off, and the drug use really took off in college. After college, so I graduated. Emporia State University, go Hornets. After I graduated, I was lost and purposeless in life, and the drugs really started to take over my life.
And that road led to prison.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's detour backward, first of all, when you talked about, because I think that's an important point that you made. I think for a lot of young people who are not even if they don't excel in athletics, if they even participate in athletics, if something happens that derails that, or really any activity that you might participate in.
Right.
If something derails it, but yet it's been an activity that you so closely associated your identity with, trying to find your way.
Right.
Once that identity ends.
Right.
That's tough.
Right. Well, and so you can't drink and use drugs and excel in sports, right? So when that part of the identity died, because I didn't have a strong identity, the only identity that was left that made me feel good about myself was the partying, that identity. So, and not only that, but you got to remember, like, physical health, mental health, and spiritual health, that is the full circle for having a healthy mind, body, spirit, right? Mm-hmm. So when you take physical health out of that, and I'm not training, and I'm not eating healthy, and I'm not doing the daily care things I need physically to feel good as a human being, all of a sudden it puts a lot of pressure on and I didn't have spiritual care at the time because I didn't believe in anything, other than myself. So my mental health was bearing all the burden for everything.
And the coping mechanisms weren't developed yet, that identity, that rationale wasn't developed yet.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing is then that led to some poor choices that led to prison. Do you mind sharing what that was, what happened?
I sold drugs to support my habit, and I got caught, and I went to prison for it.
Did that turn out to be a good thing?
It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, the U.S. Marshals didn't arrest me. They rescued me. The judge didn't. Judge Robinson, Judge Julie Robinson, she saved my life. She saved my life. Prison was the best thing that ever happened to me.
What was it? What was the moment? Because I'm sure you probably weren't happy the day that you went in the door. You probably weren't happy going through court proceedings.
No, so actually, Melissa, what had happened is I got arrested, and I was released on pretrial release because, I was an oddity. They don't have a whole lot of college graduates from upper middle class families that have a huge support system standing in front of them in court. And when I got released, I had been sober, and I'd gotten sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd worked at 12 steps, and that's where I got the idea of God. I came home, and I got arrested, and they let me out on pretrial release, and I immediately relapsed, and I thought my life was over. And I attempted suicide via car accident. I was on 268 highway I was loaded coming home from a bar in Pomona, and I just let go of the steering wheel of my car. And I went end over end and side over side. Everything that was in the car went out the windows except for me, and I got up without a scratch on me. And I walked back to the road, and I'm kind of thinking about things, and I feel different. And I'm wondering, how could I possibly be walking away from this? What's the purpose of this? And I went home, and I told my parents, who I'd been lying to, that I'd relapsed, and that I was in really bad shape. And I had to tell my mom and dad, who finally had their son back. I was finally sober for the first time, that I'd wrecked the vehicle that they'd got me, and I'd relapsed, and I just attempted suicide. The people that if there was an amount of love that parents could give their children to keep bad things from happening to them, I had 10 times more than I needed. My parents did everything they possibly could have. They gave me all the love in the world. But nothing was going to stop the path that I was on. So I walked into my bedroom. I got down on my hands and knees, and I cried out to the universe, and I said, if there's a God out there, now's the time, because I just want to die. My heart is broken, my soul's broken. I feel like I've destroyed every relationship in my life. And that was the moment that Christ revealed himself to me.
In the form of U.S. Marshals?
No, no.
I mean, and a judge and a courtroom and everything else.
Eventually, yes. So I had my experience, gave my life to Christ that very night. It was like Paul on the road to Damascus, incredible, absolutely incredible. The most incredible experience I've ever experienced in my life. I went to Stormont Vale West, and I was there for a few days, and then I decided to turn myself in because I knew that I was just hurting myself and hurting my family while I was out. So I knew I was going to do time, so I turned myself in and started doing my time. And the old adage that you become the people you surround yourself with. As a kid, I'd listen to my dad say that, like, John, you need to make good friends, and John, you need to surround yourself with good people, and you need to do this. And he'd always say, like, pick your 3 best friends. That's who you are as a person. Look at the kind of person, the people your 3 best friends are. That's who you become. right? So I had this opportunity, right, to learn and to work on myself in a place that was completely outside of the stresses of the world, right? I'm not paying bills. I'm not doing anything else. Like, I have time. I have this unique time to just work on myself, decide who I want to be as a person, and then work toward achieving that and becoming that person. So I started surrounding myself with the people that had what I wanted, right? I looked at these guys, I looked at the Christian group in prison, and all these guys are smiling, and they're laughing, and they're singing songs, and they're eating together, and they're praying together. They're always happy. How could these guys in the most miserable place in the world be happy? I wanted what they had. If I want what they have, then I'll start doing what they do. And sure enough, I got happy. You know, and then I knew when I got out, I'd always wanted to excel in business. My dad had done so well in life, and he'd set the bar so high. So I meet guys that had excelled in business. You know, they'd made mistakes, but they had done exceptionally well in business before they made their mistake or they made the wrong decision. And I talked to them, and I asked them, you know, how did you do this? How did you grow your business? You know, how did you market? How did you advertise? What kind of accounting methods did you use? And I just became a student. And if I have one quality that's really served me well in life, Melissa, it's been that I'm coachable. You know, I love to learn. I love it. And usually when you come to people that have something that you want and you come in humility, most people are willing to give you their time. And they did, and it changed my life.
I'm just thinking back on your wake-up call because, you know, we recently, I talked to an RN about the topic of suicide prevention, which, by the way, if you've been hearing John's story and there's anything that you're feeling in yourself or a loved one right now that has you feeling in crisis, please reach out to the 988 hotline. It's there 24/7, 988. Hit pause, go, call, make that call, because it could be the thing that changes your life.
Amen.
But we had this discussion about impulsiveness and how a lot of times, especially with young people, that part of the brain that controls the impulses isn't fully developed yet. And the method of suicide that many young people, especially men, choose is by firearm. Mm-hmm. And the point being that once you pull the trigger, it's too late.
There's no putting the bullet back in the gun.
Yes. And so when I think about, I mean, you had one heck of a wake-up call. Most people don't get the chance to come back from that wake-up call. So what did you learn? What do you know now that you wish you'd known then, that you could impart to people to say, you know, before you're taking your hands off the wheel, before you're putting your finger through the pole? I mean, what do you tell people?
It's our secrets that keep us sick. It's our secrets that keep us sick. If you are feeling a certain type of way, if there is somebody out there, everybody thinks their stories are so unique. There's so much about humanity. There's a million things that make us alike compared to the few things that make us separate, right? You know, the human experience, we all experience the same things. We all experience sadness and happiness, elation and depression. You know, we all go through these things. There is somebody out there that has gone through the same thing that you have, right? My job on the other side of this now is to share my experiences, joys, and hopes with others that have gone through the same thing that I have, right? If you're feeling a certain type of way, you need to talk to somebody. You need to raise your hand. And even though everything inside of you is telling you to keep this introvert and keep it to yourself, you have to do something about it. But this is super cliche, but in any moment, this too shall pass. You know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about, I don't have to be sober for the rest of my life. I just need to be sober for the next 24 hours, right? And Melissa, there's been times that I just sat there to be sober for the next 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then it was, okay, God, if you want me to stay sober, keep me sober for another 4 minutes. You know, and it was 5 minutes at a time. And then it was 60 minutes at a time. And then it was a day at a time. And then on September 18th, I got to celebrate 5 years. So this too shall pass. You know, we want to jump and we want to react super fast to these situations. Time heals all. It really does.
How does boxing help with that? So you picked up boxing in prison, and I think, and this is where we kind of start the conversation. Right. Something has to be an outlet because, you even talk about having all the advantages of parents who had all the love in the world, and some people might listen and say, well, that's great, but, my family life isn't that great. I don't feel like I have a lot of friends surrounding me. I think that we need to also take away that there is somebody there or something there that can provide that outlet. Right. So what ended up happening that you learned through the boxing? Was it really just the control?
So no, it started off as an Iron Man race. I was going to get out and I was going to go run Iron Man Austin 70.3. So I got out and I trained for it when I was out and everything else. Well, I knew that Taylor was the one from the jump. Taylor had no idea anything about me, and she could care less about me the entire time. Until I'd gotten out of the halfway house, and I've got a good job, and I'm working, and I'm training for this Ironman, and I book it 6 months in advance to make sure that I'm going to train hard for it. Well, I'm out of the halfway house. Taylor messages me. I message her back, and I invite her out because she fell in love with my old cute dad and my dog. And I invited her out, and I told her how I felt about her, and the rest is history. So I had to. Our wedding was going to be outside at Pomona State Park, and I had to pick between Ironman or getting married because they ended up falling on the same weekend because of rain. And I chose to marry my wife. Which was,
wait, you better not answer Ironman
here. So my buddies invited me up to a fight gym, and they was like, John, this is a much cheaper sport. I think you'd be really good at it. Come up. And that's where the Iron Man nickname came from, because it was, oh, you can run 20 miles, but you can't spar for 3 minutes. Come on, Iron Man. Yeah. But no, I fell in love with it. 90 days after I started, I had my first fight, and we've just been on an incredible run. But I have noticed that the punches that I take inside the ring make the punches that I take outside the ring seem a lot softer.
Nice segue, because this is another thing that happens. Wow, you got out, you got sober, you found God, you found your wife, you found boxing. Life must be so simple now. But that's the reality, and that I think is what is so difficult for people who struggle, whether it be with addiction as their mental illness or depression as their mental illness, because, okay, I've gotten help, I've done something, I'm taking the medication now, so therefore everything's going to be better and perfect. But life does not work that way.
No.
There are many realities in life. What have you learned that has helped you be able to get through those highs and lows?
So I used to like to be on either the very front of the boat or the very back of the boat, because that's where you get the most motion, right? You get the real high highs, but you also get to experience the real low lows. So I've tried to situate myself somewhere in the middle of the boat where it doesn't rock very much, right? That's the peace, the tranquil, right? Now you still get the highs and the lows, but it's a lot smaller. The difference, Melissa, and this is the truth, I chose to trust God's path in my life instead of choosing my path. My best ideas led me straight to federal prison, right? So I choose to follow God, right? And I believe in His purpose and His plan and His direction for my life. So when bad things happen, right? My son Cooper, perfect example. Perfect pregnancy. 40 weeks plus 3 days, we go in for a scheduled induction, and all hell breaks loose, right? He's stillborn. Takes him 12 minutes to revive him. He loses 50% of his brain. All of his organs are damaged. He had no oxygen, right? He was suffocating in the womb. We had no idea. Now,
it would have been very easy to walk away.
For sure. Well, and a lot of
people... Let Taylor deal with it.
Right. Or God, why would you do this to me? Why, I prayed for my son to be healthy, and I asked you all these things, and I begged you, and I've given my life to you, and you've saved me from drug addiction and suicide and prison and a life of crime and all these other things. Like, how could you let this happen to my son, right?
Or you feel guilty, like it's your fault,
right.
It's your punishment.
Now, I could have looked at the situation through that set of lenses, right? But this was the dynamic shift. I chose to look at it from a position of gratefulness, right? I didn't care if I was going to get to be Cooper's dad for 6 days or 60 years. I was going to be the best dad I could possibly be, right? When I asked God to bring my son back from the dead, and I watched a literal biblical miracle happen in front of my eyes, I didn't say, hey, I want him for this long and I want him to be able to do these things. I said, I don't want to go home with an empty car seat, and I didn't. And now I've got to watch this kid who was never supposed to walk, never supposed to talk, never supposed to do anything, do all these incredible things, right? But I have no expectation, right? I didn't say I want my son to be an incredible athlete. I didn't say I want him to be a genius and a world saver like his mother or anything else. I just wanted him to live. And I'm grateful.
To dance with Cooper.
He's something else, isn't he?
Amazing. Well, we were at a concert downtown, and all of a sudden, and I had seen Cooper out there. I knew who he was because I knew you and I knew Taylor. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, he's behind me on my back, and he's hugging me, and Taylor's just laughing, and I'm like, you want to dance? And he starts grooving. So we stand up and we start dancing because it's that pure joy. It's that pure joy and that pure innocence.
Oh, just love. The kid loves life. He lives his best life every day, Melissa. He lives his best life every day. Now, do we have some massive things and massive hurdles? Absolutely, you know. He's got huge developmental delays, and, you know, we have no idea. His hearing is healed, right? He was deaf with hearing aids, and now his hearing is healed. You know, his vision is he was supposed to be blind. His vision is healing. You know, but he still has massive mountains to overcome. Well, that's why I got back into boxing. You know, we get out of the hospital, and I've watched all these miracles happen. I've watched Christ heal my son. Like, I'm watching him heal my son daily. It's insane. And, you know, I'm thinking to myself, you know, Cooper's going to have a hard life. You know, he's going to have to work twice as hard to do everything that the normal, and that's another problem. That whole
normal?
What is normal, right? Nobody's normal. Nobody. But he's going to have to work hard. Who am I to tell this kid, hey, man, you know, like, if you work hard and you have mental toughness and grit and discipline, you can achieve anything you want in life. And you can achieve your dreams no matter what they are. Who am I to tell him that when I quit on my dreams? Mm-hmm. So I had retired from boxing, and I wanted to do the dad thing. And I gained a whole bunch of weight during COVID, and then add the sympathy weight for Taylor being, we had a blast during Taylor's pregnancy. But now I've got this sick kid, and I'm thinking of these things, and I'm 315 pounds and over 40% body fat, just horrible. And you know, physically I don't feel super healthy. And I walk into a gym, and I decide, you know what, if I'm going to tell Cooper he can live his dream, and if he tries, he needs to, regardless of whether you're a world champion or you just get to do it one time, you go for it. So I walked into Great Life. And I saw Damon Reed, of all people, down there.
Dangerous
Damon Reed, down there hitting a bag. And I walk up to him, and I'm like, "Hey, Damon, my name is John Cantrell." He's like, "I remember you." And I'm like, "Man, I've had a go of it lately, and I'd like you to be my coach." And he told me no. He's like, "John, I've seen how you fight. You know, you're a brawler. You know, I work with champions, man, and I'm trying to get out of boxing. I don't really want to do this anymore. You know, I just want to teach my little class and go on with my life."
Was this reverse psychology? He was actually motivating you?
Well, that's what happened. That's what happened. So I keep going down there and keep bugging him and bothering him, and you know, he just sees my work ethic. Like, he can see that I'm not the same person that he'd seen before. You know, I'm fighting with a new passion. I'm fighting for my kid and his dreams. So I end up telling him about my kid, and of course Damon's a big softie. He's the North Topeka hero, undefeated, but Damon's a big softie. And before you know it, he's like kind of coming over to me. He's like, "Man, when you throw the jab, you need to stay on the phone, quit bow and arrowing with your punch, and you need to do this, you need to do that." And now we're
stay on the phone. I like
yeah,
that.
you gotta stay on the phone. You gotta stay on the phone. Keep them elbows in. But I mean, yeah, we've been on a 9-0 run. We won Kansas heavyweight champion, Missouri heavyweight boxing champion, American Boxing Organization heavyweight champion. When I started with Damon, I said I just want to have one big fight one time, and we've won on Showtime. We've won on Triller Fight Club. We are, and we're moving up in the ranks fast.
You know, in all of these different experiences you've had, I feel like the one constant is reminding yourself that you need to be okay with asking for help.
Amen.
Because you asked your parents, you asked Damon, you asked Taylor, you asked, I imagine
As the parent of a special needs child, are you doing it all alone?
Melissa, I owe everything I have accomplished, everything I've done, everything I've been able to do to all the people that I've surrounded myself with. I'll quote the famous Barry Feaker. You give God the glory, you give others the credit, and you keep the joy for yourself. But yeah, it's been the support system and the people that I need around me, and when I need help, I'm not afraid to ask for help anymore. And by leaning into other people's strengths, that's how God designed us. That's why we're all different people. We're all different pieces of this beautiful puzzle, this beautiful piece of art, and we have to work together to achieve greatness. That's the only way. It's the only way. But you are only as strong as the people that you surround yourself with. And I surround myself with strong people, people a lot stronger than me.
Did you believe when you were little Johnny, raising Cain out there, did you believe in hope?
Yeah. I always believed that people were inherently good, and that gave me hope.
Did that include yourself? Or have you learned that?
That's been more learned.
You've been inherently good all along. You just couldn't see it.
We have both in us. The one you feed is the one that survives. The one you feed is the one that survives.
A little iffy for a while with you.
I was feeding both. I was feeding both the good and the bad. But when it came down to it, and I had to make a choice, and it was put in front of me very plainly, I knew who I was, and I knew who my parents raised me to be, and I knew who my friends loved and all the other people loved. I just had to look at myself through their eyes instead of through mine.
It feels like that's the day you learned hope really does exist for all of us, including you.
Amen.
Such a great conversation.
Thank you, Melissa.
Because it always ends with hope, and it ends with that smile on your face. Whether Cooper's here or not, you still got the smile. But I thank you for being so open and for sharing that journey, because it is a journey. Life, as they've been hearing a speech here recently about how we just learn to do the hard stuff better.
Amen.
And
do it
first.
first.
It was absolutely true. Life doesn't necessarily ever get easy.
Never.
So if you're waiting for it to get easy, you're going to be waiting a long time.
What fun would it be if it was easy? Anything worth having, Melissa, is worth working hard to get.
Exactly. Well, thank you so very much. Again, remember the 988 Lifeline. It is there for you 24/7. We have a lot of resources available for you as well on WIBW.com/HearMeSeeMe, including our conversations with some of the people you've mentioned. The Hope Dealer is on there as well. So, John, thank you, and thank you. Always remember, we hear you, we see you.
Amen.